This is the Statement of Purpose for the Nipigon Historical Museum, 1973. Nipigon Historical Museum in the District of Thunder Bay, organized under Bylaw Number 942 of the Township of Nipigon, has been created to do the following: collect, preserve, research, house, exhibit, and interpret all the objects that best serve to illustrate the prehistory, 8000 BC to 1200 AD, historic, 1700 to 1900, modern history, 1900 to present day of Nipigon and the surrounding region. The museum will fulfill its obligation to serve the residents of Nipigon and surrounding area by using major themes such as native prehistory, fur trading era, railway, logging, and local history in its programs within the museum. The museum itself will serve an area within a 100-mile radius and will be an interest to all who may visit, whether local resident or visitor to the region.
So in January 1970, a few dozen movers and shakers of Nipigon met in St. Edwards to brainstorm the idea of a museum, or as Buzz Lyons liked to call it, the cultural complex for Nipigon. Ad hoc committees were organized, and by 1972 Domtar Woodlands moved their offices to Red Rock and donated their building on 2nd Street to be used as a museum. We used a winter works program and donated plywood from Multiply Plywood Mill, Nipigon, along with tempered glass from local auto glass store. To build display cabinets, the people of Nipigon and surrounding communities brought in the artifacts. We opened in June 1973 with more artifacts arriving every day, equaling about 3,000 donations the first year. Because of the diversity of northwestern Ontario and the great distances then between museums, we undertook to represent a geographical area up to a 100-mile radius, more or less, of Nipigon. Okay, so it was your room at school that we met in.
Yeah, we met in. Well, like I said at the beginning, Buzz Lyon was the catalyst to get all of this going, and relentless in really what he was doing. I mean, he wouldn't say no for an answer, and got people enthused, because I know he got me enthused, and he got you enthused, and he got Elvie enthused, and
there was something for everybody to do.
Yeah,
and that was well, we had no idea at that time that we were going to get one. We figured maybe 5 years or something like that for messing around, and then boom, we got the building just like that.
Yeah, and then it was just a matter of trying to set up the rooms, putting things in display to keep them safe. I remember the old, at the entrance to the museum there was we had
cowbell.
Yeah, the old cowbell to come in, and then there was the
it's around somewhere, I don't know where, I haven't found it yet.
That section which we call the post office,
right?
Which was sort of the entrance to the old Domtar building, where
because
you had to go through the secretary or whatever to keep going.
Then that eventually got just removed, that one, because it was where you come in.
It was a barricade when you came in. And then there were the back rooms, which had a lot of windows, which we eventually didn't really put that many artifacts in, but we had we called it a sitting room, and we had
the big sitting room. That's where these I tried to replicate here. As much as I could.
Yeah, we had a table. And we had curtains, and we bought light curtains, and it was a very comfortable place to have our meetings, and a comfortable place if you had other people came in that you wanted to sit and talk with them. You could just sit.
We had lots of room.
Yeah, there's lots of room. It was quite a large room.
Yeah, it was a large room. Yeah. Windows everywhere. So you didn't have any walls to put stuff on. So that's why we had like the pianos, the organs, the table, the record player, things like that.
Yeah. Well, there were so many rooms downstairs. You went from one room to another room. Some of them had a door in between, and I guess that's basically when things started to come in. We just tried to find a place to put it, and try to keep them safe.
Oh yeah.
And in those days, with our limited budget, it was very difficult to do anything that we did. In fact, you look back at it, I don't know how we really did it.
We wrote grants. We had the Winterio grants were there. We got them every year. We got the Winter Works program. We got what's now, I guess, Human Resources. We wrote hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of grants that we wrote for that place. All the town had to do was pay the electricity, and they complained at that.
Yeah. Well, I think at the very beginning, the administration wasn't really enthused about a museum. In fact, I don't know if that letter is still around.
Oh yes,
the letter is still around, but
it's a letter.
They thought that the acting CEO, or I guess clerk treasurer in those days, said he thought it was going to be an embarrassment to Nipigon. Well, I guess that hasn't turned out to be false.
But We had the Ministry of Culture, Ollie Sawchuk. We had Jack Stokes on our side. He got everybody that he could nail down on for the government to get us in, and then he fought for our money. We had to exist for 2 years, according to the Ontario government museums branch. You had to prove yourself a museum by being open, 1,056 hours a year, or so many days, anyways. And you did that for 2 years, and then you got your startup operating grant of $5,000, which the town took, which Jack Stokes got back for us.
Yeah, yeah. And then we, on several occasions, we did a special grant to get equipment and whatnot.
Oh,
and I remember Ollie
good.
Sawchuk,
Yeah, those were good ones.
she was kind of amazed that you and I could come up with a grant that she did not have to take apart. But she said, when it came down, it was we were to the penny, and you had to get estimates on everything, including postage or shipping, in your grants, and the cost of everything, and then that went in, and I think we were the exception to the rule when it came down to it, because a few times Ollie had mentioned that we were pretty well on the top of the list when it came to filling out grants.
Because we used to find out about these grants with maybe 2 days or something. The town wouldn't tell us. Then when we did find out about it, the deadline was in 2 days. So we had to go around the town, get commitments of support for money. Okay, so we got that. Then you had to take that form that you filled out to the town, get them to stamp it, and then I drove it to Thunder Bay and got there 15 minutes before the Ministry of Culture closed, and we got the grant. So we got very good at writing grants. All of us.
Yeah, it was actually a really
fun.
It was after a while, when you got the materials in, it was very satisfying.
Oh yeah.
That we knew we could do it, and
And we did that. We did that even after with the fire. I mean, we had to do a lot of massive writing there for our supplies, just to preserve our stuff, store them in there. Yeah.
Yeah, like going back to Buzz, he was really the person who pushed to get everything, and like no problem was unsolvable when it came to his idea, because where he worked, I mean, if he wanted to do something, he just did it.
Yeah.
And for us, if we wanted to do something, there were hoops that we had to go through, and we would get shot down once in a while, but we would get up and...
Yeah, it took him 8 years to get the Beardmore relics, but we got the replicas.
Oh, yes.
We got cease and desist orders. We had Jack Stokes going into the ROM. Oh, it was... I went down there and tried to find them, and they said, oh, they're locked up in the basement somewhere, So, we drove them crazy, and then now they say, if you want to know anything about the Beardmore relics, you visit Nipigon Museum, the blog.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
They're right on the ROM website. That's where they send everybody that wants to know about the Beardmore relics.
Yeah.
And I had a guy drive all the way from California here to see it.
Good.
Because he knew he couldn't see them in Toronto, but he could get them up close and personal here. Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
It
was fun. Sometimes it was very depressing, but a lot of times, when you get the people coming in and you see what you've done, it gave you a great satisfaction.
Up and down, up and down. This is the way your emotions went.
Yeah.
Right through even till now. Even till now. It got to be a little bit beyond whatever the 14 years of the cold storage, but we sure enjoyed setting up our displays there. That's where Elvie was doing stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, Buzz could nail her at work.
Yeah, setting up the displays and then standing back and looking at them. Yeah, it was great. And then we managed to get some local carpenters to
Oh, yeah.
to make some of our cases, and each time we did that, and we got the glass put in, we accomplished something else, and then got the locks
Yeah.
for the cases and whatnot.
Yeah. Those.
Yeah, I always remember, locks and cases, when someone had stolen the keys.
Oh.
And I happened to have a student in my class. Her father was the RCMP in Nipigon, and I had just mentioned to the kids that I don't know if we came down here maybe for a tour or something, but told them that the keys were lost and we couldn't get into the cabinets. And this little girl comes up to me and she says, my dad can get into these locks. Oh, okay. All right. So anyways, I made contact with him and brought him to the museum. He asked me to stand by the door and not to follow him. And all of a sudden, in about 5 minutes, all the locks were unlocked. So we could get back into the cabinets now.
Yeah.
It was, we had so many people helping us. If we needed help
that's it.
to do something, it was there.
Yeah.
You know?
And we had, we used to do for those things every year. We had a celebration about somebody, and one was we celebrated the people of Nipigon because they're the ones that put the stuff into the museum. We're the ones that look after it and make sure it's safe and retell its story. But all this stuff come from donations.
Yeah, I don't think we've put out any money to buy any artifact.
No, after the fire I bought some pretty rocks. But
Well, yeah. But basically,
But,
everything
yeah.
it was donated.
But other than that, yeah, they're amazing stuff that we've got. And our the displays that Elvie and I set up, that guy from Dearborn, the Henry Ford Museum that Jack Stokes brought up that time, he was quite impressed with our displays. Yeah. Well, we followed the rules. I mean, we had the books that showed how we're supposed to do it. No tape or pins or whatever. Band-aids, anything that would stick. That's what some of the guys would put the things up with. Yeah.
Yeah, it's...
But we had a room for everything. Yeah, we had a room for rocks. We had a room for bottles. That's what I'm short of here. I have a case.
You have a case.
So you have another way of having to display the stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah. But like that, our Nipigon room is now one case. Yeah.
Well, we had dedicated a room to a Buzz Line, or 2 rooms. It was
Yeah.
the
archaeology. Yeah.
yeah,
and
the
archaeology
element,
1 and 2.
archaeology.
Yeah,
archaeology
Lion's
room.
Den. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he was really pleased when that happened. Eh? But he kept on bringing in stuff and finding stuff. And,
Oh yeah. I've got them downstairs, like in those Mastercraft drawers.
Mm-hmm.
All those little thousands of artifacts in there. So they're all set out that you just pull out a drawer and look at them like that. Well, Elvie, you got to get your 2 cents worth in here, or 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Your memories?
Don't have any from work. I worked in the building.
Yeah, that's right, you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, upstairs was our storage, and I had an office for.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was the curator director until it burnt, So I
Yeah,
had my
and then you went through the study,
yes, I went to the study, brought
and
the guys
then
around.
they canned the study, so it wasn't worth the hassle for all of us to put up with the shenanigans for the next 14 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I found that a difficult time because usually when I take on a project or something, I like to get it
Yeah.
going and get it complete, but
Oh, and remember when you had your class sewing those bonnets? Still got some of those bonnets around.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, we used to do different things, yeah. Well, they knew that I was interested in the museum, so... And that was
Yeah, the
part-
school classes came down Can't get them here. Very rare. They aren't coming. They go out and pick garbage. They won't come in the museum.
Well, maybe with a little bit of prodding and it's marketing, and that's really what
it's marketing,
what you have to do. I mean, this little thing here, our Welcome to the Museum. I mean, we spent a lot of time and I guess a lot of money, but this was part of our advertising.
Yeah.
And
so that's where you got the Beardmore relics. You got the tramway. You've got pretty well everything that we had in there, sort of in the timeline running.
And I think, well, we were so happy when we were able to get this published.
Oh, yeah. And we got a lot of them done, too.
Yeah.
So.
Hindsight, now I look at this and the first thing I see, paper like this, I could redo this with local advertising and whatnot. We could get it published again.
Yeah, because there is no advertising in this at all.
No, there's no advertising at all, but it could be done and sponsored by the community or
do it a different way.
Yeah.
Well, Rob wants to do the get all the photographs digitized, because he's been trying to find them, and he's spent so long going through them this way or going through the index and then trying to locate them, and then there's small ones and big ones, and they're in different places. So yeah. So I said, okay, you're going to do that. Well, then your end product's going to be a book or booklets or whatever of our, and have 2 people for a year.
Yeah.
None of this trying to do it in a couple months.
Yeah. When you mention photographs, I just think of the pile of them that we had in my house after the fire, and lucky they were packed so tight that they didn't.
Yeah.
Most of them didn't burn, but
No.
they had that particular smell to them that we couldn't get out. Yeah. Anyways, really, if I can put a feather in Betty's cap, without you, I mean, this building as it is right now would not be here. I'll tell you that right now.
No, it was,
after I sort of stepped aside and didn't really get, sort of stepped aside, not really being aggressively involved in the museum, you're the person who actually soldiered on, and this museum basically would not be here if it wasn't for you, and people recognize that.
It was a big battle.
Oh yeah.
I had my hysterics, but that was before. I mean, when they said, especially when you're told that you could get 100% grant to cover the building of the new place, and you couldn't even get a smile out of the township. That's all they needed.
Yeah. Well, that's water under the bridge, but you have to take a look at what you have.
So we got it on our own because they kept changing the grants.
Yeah.
First of all, they would support it. Then by the time, after a few years, nope, they don't do that anymore. They split them all up instead of having a variety, they put them all together, and you could only go to one place. Yeah, it was. It's not something I'd want to do again.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd have time to it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, basically, it was a trial by fire.
Yeah.
Literally.
A work of fiction based on fact, Paddle to the Sea. Tracing the St. Lawrence Seaway from the Nipigon River to the Atlantic Ocean. The author, Halling Clancy Halling, toured the Nipigon area and talked to locals in 1939. Buzz Lines always placed the little boy around Parmachene. While the National Film Board movie by director Mason wasn't actually filmed here, his daughter did present the Nipigon Historical Museum with this still of Paddle from the movie. She says he used many paddles in the process of filming. Most had strings attached so they could be retrieved from the fast water and other perils. Many elementary classes, both in Canada and the USA, study Paddle to the Sea. Some get more involved than others. In 1999, a grade 5 class from Waterford, Michigan, actually carved their own paddles. Then they teamed up with the St. Edward's grade 5 class to have their paddles launched into the Nipigon River. A great Morning Star adventure. 2 of those canoes were found over the years with their names worn off, but I knew where they came from, so we kept them for the museum display, so their story could be told, a real fact to go with the fiction. This whole display started to come together after the fire, the museum fire of February 11th, 1990, when a little boy from Ohio area created a paddle to the sea. Little canoe as his father-son grade 2 project. His paddle, too, had a wonderful copper keel and his name and address etched in it. This was a very serious project for that family. The father contacted the Thunder Bay Museum, who suggested he throw it in the Silver Island to miss all the islands in the Nipigon Bay. Fortunately, the father held out for authenticity, and he was given our place of work number. If nothing else, the disastrous fire of the year before made us known in museum circles. So it was with great surprise one day in early June 1991 that I was called to the office to answer a phone call from Ohio. I sent the family a package of local brochures and maps. The youngsters wanted an indoor pool, so they planned on staying overnight in Thunder Bay. The day of arrival arrived. I met them on Front Street, and they followed me past the cemetery to park under the railway bridge, where we were joined by Roland, director-curator, and Elvie Schwazla. Roland has a very strong voice, so the father wanted him to read from Paddle to the Sea, as he filmed his son putting his paddle to the sea into the Nipigon River while his mother and sister watched. So Paddle to the Sea was released and promptly just sat in a back eddy pool. With some scrambling, the little canoe was retrieved. After a short family conference over the best way to get it into the current, Scott ended up giving it a mighty throw, and the river caught it, and the little paddle to the sea was on its way. There was a little sadness at the parting. We drove to the marina and tried to espy it with binoculars out in the far current. The day was still young, so they followed me home to visit the Betty Brill sawmill. You will recall that Paddle had a very traumatic time with a sawmill. For lunch, they went to the Husky House restaurant so the kids could watch the big trucks while they ate. I met up with them there, bringing the Beardmore relic Viking sword replica that had survived the fire. I'm not sure just how impressed a grade 2 boy could become, but when I visited Scott some years later, he had a forge in his backyard and was making swords. I do think he was more influenced by that TV show where there could be only one. Maybe? Anyways, he was still at an age we could go out and catch fireflies, and more thrilled to go to the Natural Science Museum than the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I was a little torn, but there was time for only one, as I had a Sandusky ferry to catch. We exchanged Christmas cards for many years. One cute memory of their trip to Nipigon was when flying home, Scott's sister said she could see Paddle in Lake Superior already. Scott's father laughed. At the height he was flying, those great lake freighters looked just like little canoes on the great blue water of Lake Superior.
Nipigon River. Okay. They diverted the river when they made the causeway. You'll see the causeway when you're down at the waterfront. Yeah. And yeah, for this train track that runs right along the bottom here.
was what?
1885 was the first wooden trestle for the railway going across the Nipigon River, going from east to west to meet the westward sea tracks. The stone that's used now in these pillars was quarried from the quarries out on the highlands.
Go like this. It doesn't try to go
Our highway bridge that's here, the original ones that you can see part of the empty bridging part, that was in 1937 that it was built. And this is a new one that they built just a few years back.
So when it's upside down water.
Now they're planning to build us another one of those bridges to double to make it a 2-lane or a 4-lane highway. So we'll have 3 bridges across the river.
Buzzard, Curator, Director of the Nipigon Historical Museum. I made you paddle person because I had a dream. A little wooden man smiled at me. He sat in a canoe on a snowbank on this hill. Now the dream has begun to come true. The sun spirit will look down at the snow. The snow will melt and the water will run downhill to the river, on down to the Great Lakes, down again, and on at last to the sea. We will go with the water, and you will have adventures that I would like to have. But I cannot go with you because I have to help my father with the traps. The time has come for you to sit on this snowbank and wait for the sun spirit to set you free. Then you will be a real paddle person, a real paddle to the sea.
Oh, you have started your journey. You paddle to the sea.
Well,
You can move him off.
yeah, you can give him a little lift because he's got some stones he's got to. Just give him a little nudge. Once he gets by that stone, he's laughing.
Oh, you have started your journey. You are truly a paddle person. Paddle to the sea. Goodbye.
Get to see him go under. I mean, go.
Symbolically took another look around. Took another look around.
He took a look back at us, Scott. Well, I think we probably I'll need to take it out here and toss him back if you're okay.
Oh my.
looking back on the bridge that we let paddle go over. Now we're scanning the waters that paddle shortly will be coming down. Betty Brill is checking some of the areas where paddle might be. And somewhere in these waters, paddle is on his journey to the sea. Good luck, paddle.
So this is our archaic paleo type artifacts that would run 50 to 70 centuries ago. And they are listed into different cultures by the archaeologists, depending on the shapes of the tools. So the far distant ones, the paleo ones, they're the ones without notches. And we can generally put them into the various areas, but we use the archaeologists from Lakehead universities to really designate where they go. So we're fortunate in that our collection comes from the local population. They find it, they bring it in, we figure out what it is. So this collection here of lithics goes back, say, 50 centuries, and it was in South Bay on an island in Lake Nipigon. Now, it was discovered when these two men were watching children skip stones, and they wanted to see what they were skipping. So they went over and they found these, and they, wow. So they gathered up a couple of buckets full, and I got one of the buckets here. Now, it was, the archaeologist said it was more likely a workshop because there was so much brought in at that time. And I was very happy that they brought in the flakes too, because the flakes become knives and drills and various other parts. So you have the larger tools. They're not notched, so they were before, I would say, the bow and arrow type. They were more for the spears. And they called them, I think, the caribou. They were called the post-glacial caribou hunters. And they call them lancelet points and large stone knives. So that's what you'll see in this case. Later on, moving up through the years, you'll get to more of the archaic and the laurel. They get to be smaller tools, still stone, but they're smaller tools, and they're notched. And the way they're notched becomes the cultural name for that area. Okay, so we have, this was about the time of Stonehenge, where you have climate change shifted the hunter-gatherers to the smaller game and plant resources. so the tools and weapons were smaller. And these people were indigenous to our Superior Boreal Forest region. Now what they have here on display are examples of a strikolite, a quartz arrowhead, a knife, a drill handle, a chert scraper, an end scraper, a scraper, and a gunflint and knives. So there are just an assorted things that you'll see there. This is the McCollum collection. It's unique in North America in that it's copper and lithics found at the same site. Now it's running at 1500 BC. When it was discovered in 1955, they were putting it 5,000 years ago. So they were bulldozing close to their Reflection Lake building, and his young 5-year-old son found this piece of copper. So then they got looking around and they found 36 pieces. So of course they brought in the archaeologists and they looked at it, and now it's copper and lithic tools together. The copper now, say in the last 20 years, has been tested. 3 of the pieces were tested to find out where the copper came from. So 2 of them test for the Isle Royal copper. The other is just local from somewhere around Superior here. Now they are tools that are weapons and jewelry. They have necklaces, they have bracelets, but they also have the knives and the spear points. Now they figure, now they're studied, okay, studied by archaeologists mostly in Ottawa, this group. So what we have is we have the replicas. Ottawa has the originals. The later archaeologists and different people interested in how copper tools were made in Minnesota have been trying to replicate a lot of these things. So they figure they were made in a mold, pounded into a mold, so that they all came out looking the same. I mean, they're very, very precise in being the same length, the same size and all that. So that is one way of looking at what is done. But they kept a lot of their lithic stone tools. I say if something works, you just don't throw it away. So this is, this is our really a prize piece because of the uniqueness, and that we have it on display in our museum here. Now a lot of copper was found here in Nipigon, say around 750 foot level, that's above sea level. That was when the copper culture were here, because you know the Superior went down over the years. But at the 750 foot level, that's when people were digging their basements, excavating around, cutting the highway through the hill. Lots of copper pieces were found. This was found, say, 25 miles north of us. I'm not into kilometers. And that puts it pretty close to Lake Nipigon again. And that whole area is a really good archaeological spot all along those shores and islands. This is our pottery collection. It's from the South Bay area, Lake Nipigon. It covers 1,200 years of occupation in one site on South Bay. So it was a very popular place for a long time. So we go from the pottery at the time of Christ was called a laurel. That was the laurel culture again, just the way they do the same thing for the lithics. So the laurel pottery was made as at the time of Christ. Then you have the Black Duck, Selkirk, and it was near the time of Columbus discovering America, right? And quite along with that, say 500 years ago, you have the other, just the regular pottery there that's more for the Cree style. And then we have, as a comparison, we have pottery from the Navajo, Arizona collection, showing a very fine pottery clay. Now the way they tell the difference in these, the archaeologists do, they had different styles of patterns that they put on their clay. So even when we do just get bits and pieces, they're able to identify as to which culture and put it back. Now we don't have the full pots like a lot of places find them because of our 4 seasons of very cold, hot, and cold weather that would tend to destroy them in the full shape. If, as they do in southern Ontario, they're finding them in caves, they're finding the full pottery part. But these are just along the shore again, where mostly it was the guys that were working on the wood, pulpwood, and being on shore and pulling off the pulpwood they washed ashore. They would come across these different sites. So that's the way Buzz Lyons found a lot of stuff all around Nipigon and up the rivers that he went on that area. And then he would tell the archaeologists where he found it. They would go and do the digs and find some more. So that's how we got our collection, is from the people that found it, brought it in. Then the archaeologists at Lakehead University would get themselves a grant and go up in the summertime and go look. And sometimes they found a lot, and then they would make a whole publication on it. Yeah. So we get the bits and pieces. We have thousands of pieces of it in our collection. This is the continuation of the copper artifacts. We have actual raw copper nugget type thing that would be found loose. We have a bell, a beaten copper bell. We have the spear lengths and little spear points that were found when people were digging their basements up on Bell Street. Now, we also found 2 weird, unusual artifacts. And in 1973, when we opened our museum, the archaeologists did not know what they were. Now, it's fortunate that around 2010, a retired dentist in Minnesota, he saw a painting with a native lady holding a baton that had an end like one of these strange things they were finding down in Minnesota too. So he started putting 2 and 2 together, and they figured that if you put a baton on the end of this, it's got a slot that they would fit in, right? You would cramp it on there. Then when you made your lithic tools, you would put the copper against that rock stone and hit the end. And that copper would grab and flake it off. So he named it a copper flaking baton. And he got an archaeologist and they worked on it together, and it did work. So now we know what these unusual artifacts are. And these 2 are on display, and we have 1 more that's in a private collection. But they seem to now have more in the Minnesota area. They've found more over the years than what was. Then we have, of course, the made-up fish spears. Buzz said they're as illegal as hell, but they worked on the fish and they caught it. And then we have a fish net that was used for about 50 years by a local lady in her commercial fishing or her own home fishing. So, And then we have a stone, of course, that was used. It has the ring around it that was used as like a, I would say, a weight for a net or a trap or whatever they were doing. So that's the sort of hodgepodge stuff that we have in this case. It's a little hard to go from a full room down to a case for our display. But then if we can tell the stories that go with it, it's okay. That's the value added to our collection.
I usually bring my tour in with the Hudson's Bay Company sign, rescued from the dump many years ago by Chuck Hutterelli from Rossport, and Jack Thompson at Thompson found Nipigon was taken to the dump, but he picked up and stored it. It went all over the place, and now it's on our wall. And I do have pictures here of on the sign, 1935, the original sign still on the pictures here. And Hudson Bay, the black marble on these pictures here, and so the town put the black behind it, and that's why we got that. Nipigon is a trading post without the causeway going across, and this one has the causeway going across, and the log drive, and I can remember those years. And all the trading posts, and everybody had to come through Nipigon. And I want to mention over here a wee bit with the cameraman here is the 6 point on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, very valuable, donated by his widow, Barry Gordon, the Gordon family of Nipigon. His grandfather, probably the first policeman of Nipigon in the turn of the century. Also his grandfather had camps, logging camps. But that's Barry. He was 6'4" or something, and went to school with him, but they donated this.
This is the Umbabica compass. Now it becomes a very complicated story. The Umbabica was an 82-foot freighter passenger ship. Now it was on Lake Nipigon. Now how it got to Lake Nipigon, it was cut up in pieces, put on a tramway, brought up the tramway from Alexander Falls to South Bay. They reconstructed the boat on Lake Nipigon in 1906. Now it was used to ferry freight and passengers for the Northern Transcontinental Railway construction. That's the railway that goes north of Lake Nipigon. Now Nipigon itself, as a community, was the engineering office for this Northern Transcontinental Railway, and all the materials, men, and supplies had to go across Lake Nipigon into Umbabica Bay and then north to about 2 more miles into the interior for where they were constructing this Northern Transcontinental Railway. Now Nipigon received a doctor in 1905 that was in charge of all the workers on the Northern Transcontinental Railway, from Armstrong to over somewhere around Hearst. So there was a lot of area to cover. Now back to the Umbabica. That boat was working from about 1906 to maybe about 1917 when it was sold to other people. It was originally built by Revlon Frères, which was a competing fur trade company to the Hudson Bay, and they had a store in Nipigon at that time too. So they had also fur trade posts north of Lake Nipigon, and it was they must have made their money on that because there was a lot of supplies. They said 80 tons a year went across that lake, okay, both in barges and that boat itself. Now the compass on it was rescued after it sunk in 1936. Okay, so from 1921 to 1936, it was a cut-down version and used as a commercial fishing boat. So it sunk in Jumbo Cove in 1936. He rescued the compass because it went down just about 100, maybe 100 yards from his dock. Now it stayed in that family from 1936 until 2018. The grandchildren brought it up and donated it to the museum. So it has its numbers and dates and whatever on that compass, and Ritchie Compass still exists. I Googled it up and emailed them, and they said, okay, they went back in their books and said the compass was built in 1874 and it was repaired in 1876. But they couldn't tell me who bought it. So that, it was nice to know, but it would have been nicer to know who got it in the first place before it showed up on the Reverland Freres boat in 1906. Yeah. So this is, it was pretty well, very good shape anyways. And Ritchie Compass is still going today, and he was a good inventor. He invented these compasses that were the way they were stationed on your boat. So it went through some pretty bad weather to there. But the Ambabica itself, it all depends on who's running the ship as to how good if they can't read a compass, they can run aground, and it ran aground odd times. So in November 1910, it ran aground, and they said 5,000 men were in the state of maybe starving if the winter roads didn't show up pretty soon to get them their food in there. So yeah, it had an interesting life. Babaga means where the rocks go up. It's an Indian name. So it was, and the pictures that we do have were taken by Mr. Armstrong, who was a engineer on the building of that Northern Transcontinental Railway. He took these pictures in 1909. And then we had our local Art by Art do the enlargements for us as a background for our information. Now, the story of the 7 men for St. Mary's, those men would have traveled up on the Ambabica to get to where they were working. 7 men for St. Mary's. They came because Canada called for them, industrious sons of the Norse, to hew and to haul and to quarry, to open a western course. Archaic landforms of the Precambrian shield, of water, the walk, the tree, reminders to them of their homeland, now obstructions all could see. It happened 1 month before March arrived, the winter of 1909, when the men were taken from us, then placed in their shroud of pine. The horses, great beasts of the Belgian breed, their shoes clove deep in the snow, taking 7 men for St. Mary's, their coffins in silent tow. The bells of the sleigh and the horses were tolled 150 miles. Gone were these men from their labors, from their hardships and their trials. This is the story of the crosses. Now, they came to light about 2005, maybe. I got a email from Norway, and this fellow was looking for where his great-great-uncle had died. he had information from Thunder Bay Museum, the old newspapers, talking about the gruesome journey and where the accident happened at Cross Lake in 1909, February 15th, 1909, where 7 men were killed. And one of those 7 men was his great-uncle. So he was interested to find that. So I was interested to find that too. But it was very hard to find Cross Lake, for the simple reason that in 1982, Toronto was changed to the name of Toronto Lake. So it wasn't until about 2009, say 2008 maybe, I got a bunch of fishing maps from Mr. Mills from Paddle Pack and Speckled Trout. His father used in the 1930s, 40s when he was fishing here, and on those maps I found Cross Lake. So then I went to the regular map and there was Toronto Lake, same shape, so it was easy enough to find that way. So there we had that, but we still didn't have the crosses. It said they were buried in our churchyard over here, and I checked with Reverend McClure, and they didn't even keep records until 1910, and these were buried in 1909. But then later on that summer, he was cleaning out the little shed behind the church, St. Mary's Church, and he found these 4 crosses. And they had the brass plates on it, and the names matched 4 of the 7 men. So now we didn't get his great-uncle's cross, but we got 4 crosses that matched 4 of the 7 men that were killed. So we know that that then is true. And we do have photographs of where they had the stone monuments, but we figure those were removed in the late 70s when there was a ruling put through that any unsupported rock in your cemeteries had to be removed or laid down so they wouldn't fall over on children. So I don't know where those rocks went, but we do have the 4 crosses. So these were when he did find out about his uncle, he chased around Norway looking where he was, because he was a surveyor, and he climbed some of the mountains there, and he found where his uncle had put cairns up and stuff like that. So we're still in contact back and forth every Christmas or whenever we want to see how we're doing and how they're doing. And then after we did that Destination Nipigon video, he was really excited over that, because that really did showcase this part of our story. So what happened was, when they were killed on that 15th of February 1909, the next day they were brought down by or started out anyways, by horse and sleigh, bringing the coffins down to Nipigon, which took 5 days. As soon as they got here to Nipigon, they had the coroner's inquest, and then the next day they were buried in the churchyard. But all the burial records are in the Thunder Bay churches, and he was able to get those, so we have copies of those too. But it adds to that story of our railway construction, because it's very hard to display a railroad inside your museum. So so we're lucky now that we have this, and then we can connect the Umbabica boat to that, because it was actually during the construction of that railway that the Umbabica was built.
I grew up in Nipigon, and we had lots of dairies. This is a Thunder Bay dairies, but many, I want to say half or a third of the book, It was in Nipigon area, and one of the last was the Rojo's Dairy. And we used to get the milk bottle like this in our house way back in the 1950s, and it would freeze in winter time, and the cream would come up here, and the cap would sit on top. And but my mother always took the cream for their coffee. So they used to come in bottles like that, and that's a butter churner. And I asked Arvo one time, did he know about dragon milk? He said no. And there's moose milk, cow's milk, chocolate milk, goat milk, but he didn't know about dragon milk. And dragon milk, for Nipigon here, is cows with long udders.
Nipigon is a multicultural community, and what we are showcasing here in this case is the Finnish population, and they came over at the turn of the century and wherever, and they worked in the usually for the railway when they were building the railway and doing that sort of stuff. So then they got into clearing land for their own homestead. They sold the timber for ties for the railway and whatever else they needed. So we have here what they brought with them in the way of souvenirs from Lapland, and even the way they came over was with veneer suitcases. The ones that were varnished have lasted better than the ones that weren't. So this one came in 1922. And and also another aspect of them is they did a lot of wood carving. So we have spoons and bowls and different artifacts that they have carved locally. Then, since they came over by sea, they were limited in what they could bring. So we're fortunate that once they got here, they could rebuild a lot of the stuff that they didn't bring with them. And one of the things is the loom, the mat loom, where they, in the early 60s, there was lots of locally made rugs and mats for the floor that were woven on these kind of looms. So a lot of people had looms, and it says it takes 6 hours to string them. I was fortunate that it was already strung when we got it, but they did send the booklet along on how to do it, and they sent a lot of the torn up cloth that they would have used to make their rugs. So this was from assorted families, and then we were really, I say, about almost, they said at one time, almost 95% Finn in our population. But nowadays we're into a great assortment. We had a multicultural display on in 2009, and we were able to showcase 33 countries. So there's a lot of different races and ethnic groups in our area. Because then there was, at that time, they still had the mills going, and there was, work. Now we're turning into a different type of community because we don't have the big industries. So that came that way. Others came in from when they were relocated. The Japanese from British Columbia, they came in wooden boxes. They were about 3 feet by 4 feet wooden boxes that they brought all their supplies in. That's all they were limited, like one box per family. And so after the war, a lot of them just stayed within our communities here, because they got sent in here, so they got work, and they liked the area. There was nothing to go back for because all their land was confiscated, so they started their life here. So we have that in our culture.
And this here's a bell in our Catholic Church. It was, it says NEP, Nipigon. You can come and see these when you visit Nipigon. Father, Reverend Scholar, DD, all this is on the bell. And it was donated by Mr. H.M. Foley. I didn't know who Foley was in 1912 and for this church. But I didn't know who Foley was, but he was the engineer building the CNR Railway, going through up the Kinghorn Railway. So that's the bell, and we transferred from this, I didn't, transfer from here over to the new church. And there's Bill with the size of the bell. And I ring it on Saturday night and Sundays. And the little story of Mr. Foley. Let's see. He talked about whiskey being sold by the water glass and the dances which he squared one and the other of the Foley girls. His daughters must have entertained at the Finn Hall, whatever, over there. Mr. Foley, who donated the bell. So that's a little story. Where'd I pull this from now? I'll just sit there. Anyways, we're going to go over to the pictographs. There's the May-Miigwech, and I'll show you where they are. They're right down here on the cliffs. Used to be 90 feet of water there. The underground river. That's my story anyway. All these pictures were taken from the same location, up on top of the hill where the tower is now. And that smoke, that's not the Red Rock Mill. That's a cruiser going to come up here to the harbor. 1895, we had a long dock, and it was built high enough it didn't flood. And the lagoon went right around, no causeway. Now we have a causeway. And you can see the boats loading, hauling wood to the States, the little mill, which is probably in operation at that time. And down here in the mud flats, the families, the Gonyus, the Chavoyers, the Dampier family. There's many more names live down here on the mud flats. Eddie Belange and his brother Marcel on the dock, 1941. And the river used to go this way, and the Dampier boats are over in here in those days. And there's no back channel in those days. So, and there's houses across the river. There was establishments, and the first road probably that's the way the bell went up to St. Sylvester Church up that road. They call it every place they call them this Hudson Bay Road. So anyway, the McDonald clan were down here too, and so that's some of the 1940s. And the Red Rock Mill wasn't in operation too much. This was probably during the war, so there's prisoner of war. The pictographs, like I mentioned there. And we're going to move over this way a wee bit. Again, these are pictures 1961, the newer one. And it's got the causeway, the old black bridge before they put the concrete one they got now. Mac McCullough's boathouse down there. And we have one picture, not very good, you can come to Nipigon visit, of the coal chute. I never seen anyone around like that around this area. And this is the CN line going from Thunder Bay to Long Lac. And these are all the Nipigon Lake timber. That's all their buildings. Again, around the back channel. And down, the wood was in the bag here. You had to jump, go into the bag to go see the pictographs in those days. And if the wood started coming down the river, you had to get the heck out or have to, and we did many times, lift the boat over top of the booms. So, and I have a paper here which shows all the names, all these houses right here. Kenny Dampier came in one day and gave me the names of all the houses that lived down there. I'm not going to read them off now, but there's some of the families. Come on, the Loftus families. There's lots of families there. And this is some more pictures along here. There's a pictograph of the May-Miigwech again. A lot of people can't find the little creature because he's hidden behind cedar bough, right by the pictographs, right by the deep, used to be 90 feet of water. And the old chart showed me that first time I saw them went out. So I told the story of the underground river there. Could be. So, and that's men for here. Lawrence Martin worked in the bush. He was in 2 world wars, I think, second and the first. I mean the Korean War. Now, I'm going to ask my cameraman to take a look at this here after he gets a chance. All the veterans, my dad got one of those. It's a plaque from the township of Nipigon, which is very nice. My dad was owning Nipigon for 3 years, but he got a plaque from the township, like I still got it. And the town of Nipigon is very generous to their veterans. And this is a Martin family. There was more pictures, but they've gone up to the hospitals. But I have a sad note. People don't realize, and it makes me sad, that the native indigenous people had to give up their status to join the armed forces to fight for Canada. And I read the Legion magazine, some stories. Some they wouldn't accept for service. Other ones, they were very good. They had them as snipers, as trackers. They did a lot of work for the armed forces, which the regular guys couldn't do. So, but then they had to come back and they hadn't have any rights. That's the sad part. They had to try to get their status back. But imagine having to fight for a country. And the native were heroes from the War of 1812, Tecumseh and General Brock, right through all the way. Canada would not exist without our native people. So they exist. Journey down the Nipigon River, past and the present. We're going to start way up here on Lake Nipigon and come down through all the falls, and that's Virgin Falls. That's a controlled dam built in 1925. You will not have this map at home like I have unless you get one of these. But I'm going to give you a tour down. And again, there's the Upper Virgin Falls right here with all the control dams. And you're coming down the river here. And the best fishing, this is, I don't know how old these pictures are, but see all the falls? And now I'm going to show you the fishing rod right here. It's flat. That falls, no longer there. They're all flat like this fishing rod. The whole lake area here is flat from that dam. It backed up. 11 miles is the best speckled trout fishing in the world. When they put that dam in, they dammed up all these falls. And the light part is original. White chutes, all these names here, that was original way back. And now it's flat. You see the dark blue? It's just one big flat lake. So while you're slowly going down here, I'm going to fire up this one now. They're both on internet, but you will not get my stories. And you don't have to show either one of these. Come on, go. So this is coming down the river. Now this is Nipigon Trail. This is a video. Now I'm going to tell you stuff they don't tell you when you watch this. You can read this when you watch it at home online. And again, it's flat on this side. I'm using my fish rod back and forth. So the flat lake up way above. And now here you come up here. You come up by railway, Canadian National, up to a place called Orient Bay. It's still there. It's shut down. That's Orient Bay, the Royal Windsor Lodge. And that's a part of our heritage. Now, this is where everything takes off from at Orient Bay. And they come across Lake Nipigon over to the Virgin Falls. Now, this is what it looked like. I can almost maybe remember that when I was a kid maybe, but that's what it doesn't look like that now. It's one big part. It's empty, it's falling down, it's going to be torn down. But this is some of the families. And they were hard-working fellows, those natives. They worked. Guides, and some of them I heard packed 300, 400 packs. I don't know if that was trappers or what. But they carried canoes, and I'm going back and forth, and I can almost remember that building. So here we go across the motor launch from Orient Bay across the top end of Lake Nipigon here. See, there's the motor launch. Now, the clients were in there, and the guides, the native guides, indigenous people, did not get to ride. They had to ride the canoes over. Again, Lake Nipigon, I never saw it so level like that. I usually see it pretty rip-roaring. And probably the number of high 11s along those cliffs, probably. And they're riding no life jackets and canoes, open canoe across Lake Nipigon. So anybody's been on Lake Nipigon, you know it's not always that kind. And so we're still heading down here, down Hamilton Pool. And I like this fellow with the legs stick out. Looks like a motorcycle guy with the legs out there heading out across Lake Nipigon. So now we're coming to Hamilton Pool. We're way down the bottom already. We're heading down into here. Pine Portage Dam is over here. Now we're getting down to Robinson's Pool. That's down in here. We're getting down into here. And that's what it looks like today. And the falls, both sides, you'll see that on the falls here. And there's a Pine Portage Dam right across that pool. We're on top of the dam now. So, and always remember all the rushing water here. And there's again, the dam is there. Now what I always say, the fish in the Nipigon River were athletes. That's why they had such big fish in those days, right there. They were athletes, and they're the best. So that's why they're with all the falls, 11 miles of falls gone when they built the Pine Portage Dam. And I've been here, now we're into my territory. We used to camp here one time, now hydro blocked it all off. And that's what it was before. People fished along there. And there's a little shot of the dam. Again, we used to camp here. That's the dam. They put the block back, make Nipigon a bit. And now we're on, my hair's standing up the back of my neck, Spit Rock. And here we're coming down in a canoe. Not Kevlar, they were probably canvas back canoes, packed coming down the Nipigon River. And here is Spit Rock. Awesome place. And the cliffs are 1,500 feet on that side. And on the hiking side, we have a trail into there, Spit Rock. It's only 1,300 feet. Again, I said 1,500 feet on here. So, and that's gone through. I can tell the story, and I call that Battleship Rock. Tugboat Rock. And there's Spit Rock again, right in the middle. And here they are shooting down the... I give kudos to the cameraman. Imagine carrying a camera and getting someplace and then taking video of this. Again, Spit Rock here. So we're down on this map now. We've come down to Spit Rock. Coming down, and our trail is right about here someplace. A hiking trail. You can actually hike into Spit Rock. And there's a trail to go in there and actually see it. And it's an awesome place. There's no place east of the Rockies like Spit Rock Passage. No, I've heard from a guy who said no way. And here they're lowering the canoes down. And one guy just told me today, the big, I can't remember what he called them, but they had to roll them up, get them back up. They used to run down a log drive, and they had to haul them back up. Now this camp here is right across in Spit Rock. Right across, right here. It's right here. Marked in the wrong place. Tugboat Rock again. So, now we're heading to the Narrows. When they put the dam in, they flooded the Narrows. They flooded that. It's only a small area. See, when they put Cameron in, they only blocked this off. Now I gotta watch this right here. Cameron Falls, right here. The fish could not get past in early days past Cameron. No Lake Superior fish ever got to Lake Nipigon because they could not pass Cameron Falls. The rest they get up, but not Cameron. So that's why maybe they got up the Underground River. That's the way they got up. And come here to the bridge in front of Cameron. And that's the only bridge you can cross, beside Nipigon River Bridge. You can cross the Nipigon River on the Bailey Bridge. That was used for the trains that built Cameron and Alexander. And again, when the falls are there at Alexander. And again, nothing, they're shooting down the river here, or some of the fall, just coming, we're still above Spit Rock here on this one. We're coming down Alexander Portage now, coming down to this area here. Again, it's not always the falls there, and they had to put these red tanks there to keep the boaters from going in too close, because they would be submerged, the water. This is Lake Helen, that's Highway 11, this is the old landing, Nipigon Landing. We used to call it landing when we were kids. So we're at just above the Nipigon River Bridge right now. That's what it looks like today. So we're into my modern area, and here again, 1905, I think I pictured this, and no causeway. Now they put the causeway, it's all grown in. Again, no causeway in 1906, and the river went right around, and and I got to tell a story about that after. Again, this is the last picture. Right here, see, we'll be all eroded right behind us, the lagoon. The museum might not have been here. And that's the end of that story. Now it's all going in. Now we're going to go here. The gorge. That's talking about Spit Rock. And the canoe coming down. Remember I said no life jackets? Anybody did some canoeing knows something about that. This is coming to the meat part. I got to tell a story about this here too. Well, I got a minute. Anyway, the lagoon here, it's not all just deep. I got a map from the mayor like this, and it goes right around. There's deep parts and the shallow parts. It's like an old river going right around. That's why it was so good. Now here we go here now. I wouldn't do this. I let this right to last. Going across these walkways. And this is 1923. No rescue. No Coast Guard will come and get you there. And the rocks are probably pretty slippery. But look at, imagine the ozone and the dampness. But that's where the fish was, right there in the pools. That's where they caught them. Lots. Royalty come here. I just heard the story this morning. The Duke of Connaught was here in 1918, and he sent his cousin, Prince Edward, to come back the next year, 1919. So, I leave this part stick out to last. That's why I do the 10 minutes here. And they're coming down. And again, this cameraman is way up on top of the cliff somewhere there. I imagine having to climb in 1923. I don't think they had a little small handy cam in those days. I don't know what they carried. So we're heading down into Split Rock. Again, my hair is standing up. It's an awesome place. This picture shouldn't be here. I don't know. That's again on Lake Nipigon, but they put it here. So we're going to go to Split Rock. By that time, it was slowly coming up because Cameron Falls was in. When they made this video, Cameron Falls is lifted up already. And but you can still see the damage by the river when it flooded. No pine. The main river here coming down flooded. Oh, maybe got something else here. Yes, our indigenous people are hard working. Look at just the goal. And he likes to kick up a little steam. Watch the water fly up that up, aye. Just to have luck to paddle. They were hard working people. I even found farmland out there in Parmachine where they used to live. Hunters. And then the gorge. Split Rock again. This is 923. Split Rock's mentioned many times earlier than that. And again, the gorge. Look at the damage here, left by the water, flooding. A hiking trail right up about here, if you remember I was showing you the picture. Maybe that's me sitting there now, on top of that rock. But anyway, that's a look. But look at how much the water, the damage, the water raging the Nipigon River and flood in those days when the everything flooded, no dams, and they come down and flooded. So this is Split Rock itself from the south end. And then there's a guy, he likes to kick up a little water again. So there we go. And that's the end of it. Thank you very much. That's good. Now I got a story and I can't remember them. I did try to briefly the lagoon. That's very important that it's like this all the way around. It's not flat. I always thought it was just 20. It's not. It's 20 and 7 goes around. Now I got to tell a story. This is by Don Gapin. It's off his. It's in here in Nipigon. We have the Don Gapin. He visited us here at the chalet, and I recorded him on camera, and you can come watch it. But one of the stories I want to share, actually two, when they go fishing, and they used to come down the Nipigon River with the guides, they used to slip the river. They used to slip. They'd paddle like this, slip backwards down the river. Okay, they're slipping. They're not paddling up or paddling down. They're slipping down the river. Okay, that's one story. Second story. You will not find this anywhere else. Just in Nipigon here, the story. Young Don went to see his dad. Yeah, and he says, "Hey, Dad," he says, I'm the boss's son. He said, "That Indian is sitting there, smoking his pipe, telling stories at night. I gotta make the beds, put firewood, and get the stuff ready, get food, make supper, get wash. I gotta do all the work. That's his job. I'm the boss's son," he said. And his father looked up and he said, "Son, he's doing his job. You do his job." Okay, he was doing the heritage, telling the stories. Didn't have TV in those days. He told the stories of pipe and fishing. So, is that a good story? Do you like my stories? There's nobody else to get into it. Okay, we're gonna come around the corner. 2 more minutes, D. This was caught. Oh, I'm gonna put my fishing rod back in. You'll get set up there whenever you want. And they caught this one on July 1st or something. The very next day, they caught a double catch. Because they didn't know this. Rob Swainson found this out. They got the world record double catch again. Because they put more in one line. He didn't have just one. Maybe he had 4 lines on. So they got the world record double catch on the Nipigon River again. And this is all reached by the Canadian National Railway System. The Kinghorn Line, which has now been pulled away. We don't have it anymore. I'll let you go over here. This is Mr. Alexi, Andrew. And his grandson, still alive now. Lulu, I guess they call him. Little baby at the Nipigon Hospital. And he was the guy. He was also the guy for the Duke of Connaught and for Edward, Prince of Wales. Became Edward the 8th, I guess. I think he was the one that abdicated. Now I like to talk about money. In this 1901, all non-residents paying $15 in license and $400. That's what they paid in those days. Equivalent of 2015 equivalent of $400. Now what I like is here that First Nation people, 2 guides are hired for each tourist. 1881, you watch the old westerns, the old cavalry show. I think the private made $25 or $30 a month as a cavalryman, and guys working on a farm, they might have got $25 or $30 in pound. But these people were getting $2 a day at that time, which if they worked 20 days is $40 a month, no income tax. Plus, whatever else they did. Canoes. They were hard-working people. So again, I guess they're working hard, but I like that about the money they made in those days. So one day the young lady said, "Hey, Jim, you forgot your bag." "Oh," I said, "bring it over to me." She grabbed it and went, no. But anyways, I get people to pick this up. Look at that. That's 14.5 pounds, that bag. That's the weight of the fish. Then I bring them over here. Come with me. And I come over to the fishing rod. Yes, this slender little fishing rod here. And that's what they caught it on. Hard to believe. That's what they caught it on right there by Dr. Cook. And it's a Len from Dr. Donaldson are letting us keep it here and have all the books to register the names when they come in to do that. So this is the fishing rod it was caught on. So, and probably a fly fishing rod at that time, I think so. And that's the remains, nothing left of it too much, the original fish. It did just have the skin, but we figure someone says they'll make the other half somewhere. That's one side of the skin, where's the other side? So, and that's all I'm going to say, I think.
The Beardmore relics. These are the Beardmore relic replicas. Toronto has the originals. Now, they were found by Mr. Dodds from Thunder Bay, or Port Arthur, back in the 1930s. He claims at his mining claim outside of Warrenford Station, which is just south of Beardmore. He worked for the CN line, so he would travel back and forth that way. Now, he said he found them when he was dynamiting for his claim. And then nothing really happened for a while, and then somebody found out about them and said, well, likely Toronto would be interested in them, the archaeologists there. So then Toronto bought them, the Royal Ontario Museum. Then they got into this argument as to whether or not he found them where he found them, because a neighbor of his said, well, I saw them in his basement before he found them where he found them. However, what he found seems to be different than what that guy saw. But anyways, they all swore out their affidavits for this and that, so the Royal Ontario Museum published a booklet called Hoaxer History. That was going through the whole thing. They tested them. They were for real, around 900 to 1000 AD. So they were real Viking relics. It was just that when the discrepancy of yes or no, did he find them where he found them, and nobody was missing them or claimed them, that they thought, well, maybe we better not show them, because they didn't know for sure what they were. So they got stored away in the Royal Ontario Museum for a lot of years. But meanwhile, once they were discovered and it hit the newspapers, I mean, it really hit the newspapers. So we have a fellow from Thunder Bay sent us all the newspaper clippings at that time for those years, maybe about 4 or 5 years worth of when they were going through. Everybody was finding swords all over the place from those reports. And then they got into saying, okay, there was white Indians up at James Bay. They got into the picture. Then they said, oh, okay. They even said, well, the Vikings must have showed the copper culture how to make all those copper artifacts that they made. But they're like a few thousand years way before that the copper culture was. So this is more recent. So okay, so then we knew that the Royal Ontario Museum had them. And when we opened our museum and got our museum going, the Nipigon Historical Museum, we thought, gee whiz, it would be nice to have the Beardmore relics. So Buzz Lyons got into about an 8-year correspondence with the Royal Ontario Museum, trying to get them to our museum, and they came up with a lot of, well, if you have them, you've got to have a 24-hour guard and insurance and all this sort of stuff. It was like we even got a cease and desist order for, leave us alone. But Jack Stokes even got in it as speaker, and he went down there and said we want them and all that. And then they finally, okay, we'll just make you the replicas. So the replicas showed up, which is good because they're actually the same thing, just not the real ones, the way they made them up. And I was surprised because the whole case burnt down in the fire of 1990, and I thought, well, they're gone. But no, they survived. Their case burnt right to ashes, and the firemen found them in the ashes. So that was a surprise to us. And then I decided in 2011 we started a blog on the internet. And so how do you talk about the Beardmore relics? I put the whole thing up. I put the hoax and history up. I got the permission from the Royal Ontario Museum. I put all the newspaper accounts up. Then we have the result of that is that you have people driving all the way from California to see these replicas, which are as near to the real thing as they'd ever get. They wouldn't be able to see it in Toronto maybe, though they are in display down there now in their Viking area. They're not claimed as the Beardmore relics part, but they are real stuff. So we have them coming from there. We have them, a lot of the people from Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, they're interested in the Vikings because they really promote their Viking stuff over there in Minnesota. Then we have, oh yes, the fellow from California, his friend was the one that ran Lenape, which is, he is using the Norse sagas and ruins and Google Earth and trying to track their migration from Greenland when climate change came in on them and it froze up. They came across through Hudson Bay and then went down through Lake Winnipeg and then into, they figure, into Minnesota from that way. But since these were found on the just on off the Blackwater River a bit, not too far from the shores of Lake Nipigon, we figured they likely came down through from James Bay down through into Lake Superior through Lake Nipigon and that route, because that was a natural migration. Every summer they would come from James Bay area, the natives, come down to Superior, do their fishing, do their berry picking, then go back up for the winters. So it's the roads back and forth was no problem. They just wouldn't be able to bring their boats, but they could actually rebuild them or whatever. So in one way it's a possibility, in another way, who knows. So anyways, he's been doing that research for over 20 years, trying to locate where it is. And then he's also going through the language, saying the Ojibwe language and the Norse language at that time, the various connections between those that he's finding. And then they had a big conference down St. Louis there a couple years ago. I sent pictures of all the information and the whole Viking route hoax blog stuff down to them for their big seminar they had. And then there was where they were talking about 500 years in North America. They're doing a DNA testing of the natives to see if there's Northern European DNA in to try and verify the connections between of Vikings coming down and that. So, yeah, and even the Royal Ontario Museum says if you want to know about the Beardmore relics, you look up on our blog. So it's Nipigon Museum, the blog.blogspot.com, something like that. Anyways, you just Google Nipigon Museum, the blog, and it'll pop up because we've got thousands and thousands of page views on that one. So we were sort of indebted to Jack Stokes, which was our Member of Parliament at that time. He also twisted their arms to get it. So we have Jack Stokes, we have somebody from the ROM, and then this picture here shows who made it, the guy at the ROM that made the replicas, and Buzz Lyons and Jack Stokes. So those are the important things. Now we have a sword, we have the axe head, and we have something that they call a wrangle, which likely has some connection to their shield. Now one guy over in Wisconsin, Michigan area, he was doing, they study up and they make all these, they make the replicas, they do a lot of Viking stuff. So he said, well, he'd make me up a sword and this, that, and the other thing, and a shield, but yeah. So there's a lot of back and forth just through the blog hits. The blog has really worked well. I was always a little bit worried about putting it up there, but since all over the world is looking at our stuff, it's really good. It's a really good way to go, and this video that we're making, I think will help, because there are people, definitely people, in Australia, South America, Africa, Russia, whatever, that may never get here. But some of them make arrangements and come from England, right here. Getting your hair done. Getting your hair done was worse than anything. I don't remember when I got my first perm, but I remember being strung up to the ceiling at the hairdresser's place. Now this is from Ann Moore's interview of 2006. The hairdresser's name was Ellie Java. She's dead now. She died of cancer. She lived on the street here, further down. I don't remember what the cost was, but I remember Ellie put these curlers in, and then she put a clamp on top of those rods, and they were pretty heavy. Then she had this machine up there, and she would pull it down with cords on it, and she would attach the cords to the clamps, and then she would turn on the power. Everyone would want a perm bad enough. That's all there was. And then it would get hot on your head. It was burning hot. She would then fan or blow on it, something to cool down where it was burning. You were under there for so long, I don't remember definitely. And then she would take off the clamps, and actually you would have burns in the scalp, but not deep ones, but enough that they were there and they were sore. So that's how we got our perms. But she didn't do that for too long either. You didn't look forward to that. Ellie was the first one with that machine in Nipigon. If you wanted a perm, that was what you went through. Then there was another way of doing it. We had coal oil lamps earlier, and you put the tongs in there and heat them up that way, and then you curl your hair. But not everybody had permed hair. I mean, first of all, who wants to get burnt? And usually you had a few scabs on your scalp. Although she was very careful, but nevertheless. And they had what is called marcel. You put the tongs in the lamp, and you heat it, and you proceed to curl your hair. The same we do today with our electric tongs. There were always bobby pins, seemed to be always bobby pins. Those were always pinchy things. You don't see them anymore. There were lots of what they called Buster Brown haircuts with the bangs, and almost everybody's hair was like that. So what we're going to be getting in the way of an RCMP exhibit is Marvin Wawier is going to be sending me, he said, a complete review order number 1 with a stripped Samboe, which means no weapon in the holster. Okay, so it'll be just uniform only. And he's mailed the uniform, so you can just lift out the hanger, put it up. Now they're red serge with breeches, and it's right in regards to where it would be if the person was wearing them. All right. Now the breech have a sewn marker that runs horizontal in the back, and when you put it in the boots, that marker has to be below the rim. So it's very, very specific on how. The spurs do not need any adjusting at all, so there'll be spurs on the boots. No horse, just the spurs. So now he's going to have brass on the epaulets, and that's going to be, then there's the dog collar little badges, and so for those I'm going to have to secure them on. And then there's, so once he's settled down, he's going to be sending more stuff and a uniform to exchange for the one he sent, all right? So the Stetson can be put on a wig holder, all right? So then he's going to send pictures of himself and stuff like that. So we're looking forward to it. It's in the mail, and it should be coming, and that'll be an exciting finish to our museum tour, because it'll be the start of a new exhibit. There. Now. Oh, wow. Gloves. There's those. Yeah, it says RCMP right in it. So this is completely donated artifacts, and contacting the Nipigon Historical Museum at nipigonmuseum@gmail.com get you in contact with me. And if you have something that you think is of a value or of historic importance to Nipigon, just please contact me and we'll make arrangements as to how to get it. Okay, this came by mail. Other stuff has come by mail. Some stuff comes in person. In fact, a lot of it does. But we're quite happy to deal with you wherever you are in the world.